Today on the Lunduk Show, we've got Paul Bibaud from Pogo Linux. We're gonna do things a little differently this show. Normally, Paul comes on to school me about something I probably don't know a lot about. This time, I had some questions for him about setting up my own file storage server, and then we thought, wouldn't it be cool to open this up to the community? And we sent out a question and said, hey, everyone who watches this show, is there like a thing you want to build? Is there like a thing you want to do, like a computer you need, a server you need? Like, what do you need it to do? And then I passed that over to Paul, and he took it, and he came up with kind of what he thought would be the most awesome specs and the detailed hardware for each one. And we're going to kind of go through all of that. Paul, which one do you want to start with? Who's that hand? Who's that hand? Who's that hand over there? You have a magic hand. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting direction from people off screen.
That's awesome. All right. Which one do you want to start with here? What's your favorite one to kick off with?
Well, favorite, I don't know. I mean, I think what would be most fun to talk about first would be the emerging technologies. I think some of the things that we don't have today, but are coming and will be available to us all this later on this year.
Let's go that route.
That's going to be the most fun, I think. And it's an Intel Samsung partnership currently, and this is still kind of in the VHS Betamax war over who's going to win the form factor fight. Yeah. Because right now there are two form factors in what is being dubbed what they call ruler SSD, which is a very small form factor SSD that allows us to fit up to 32 of those solid state devices into a 1U system.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
And so I have one of my visual aids here right behind me. This is what one of those systems would look like.
So that's a 1U with is that how many is that? 32?
Yeah, that is 32 ruler SSDs, and from what I understand, the launch capacities are going to be anywhere between 12 and 32 terabytes per drive. So we are actually looking at being able to get a petabyte into 1U.
Okay.
Petabyte of flash.
Okay. So one of the requests was, how do you get to a petabyte of storage? People were thinking, what's the cheapest way to do it, or what's the most reliable or coolest way to do it? But petabyte of storage, that you could fit a petabyte of storage in a 1U unit.
In this one, you can.
That's possible. Like, that seems ridiculous. Like, holy.
I think for me, I think the challenge is getting my head around these extremely large storage devices, right? I'm challenged by having more than 30 terabytes of data on a single device. Now, I do understand. Yeah, that's why we have things like RAID. Right. That's why we that's why we build fault tolerance into our solutions. That's why but the challenge I'm faced with all the time is that normally someone would buy one of these systems. This guy right here would be one that someone would get, and they would put this would be something that would be a part of a Ceph cluster. I mean, this would actually be a great Ceph node if someone was doing an all flash Ceph deployment, because the density is so high, right? But and that allows us to get fault tolerance between the systems. So we're going to have like copy 2, copy 3 set up in our cluster environment. That way we know we have multiple copies of our data that's sharded throughout our cluster environment. And a node like this would be great for that. What this system is not good for is to buy just one and use it as a storage device.
No one can buy just one.
Right. Well, that's the problem. Is I have people that will call me and say, I want one of those because I heard they're really deep, right? And stuff like that. Yes, I understand that, but the purpose behind a node like this is to be involved in a solution that is going to provide fault tolerance throughout the breadth of the cluster.
Right. That way, I mean, this is sort of a thing where you have a 1U unit, fill it up with a petabyte of storage, but then you have several of them distribute. Yeah, I guess that does make more sense. But oh my Lord, I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my head around a 1U unit with a petabyte of storage.
I know.
How many U's are in a standard rack? What is that?
42. 42. Yeah. Now that's the standard one. A lot of data centers. Yeah. A lot of data centers nowadays are allowing people to bring in 47 U racks.
Yeah.
because obviously when you're limited by square footage, then you have to go vertical, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what they try. The challenge with the 47U rack is that they fill so much stuff, is that most spaces on the data center floor only give you so much power per racks, per column.
Right.
So you're not. So most people can't even fill a rack.
Right.
With what they get.
You end up having some of the rack filled with like sliding out keyboard trays and whatnot. Yeah. But it's just the same. So let's say hypothetically you only stick 10 of those puppies in a given rack. You get a couple of holy heavens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with copy 3, you're still talking about 3.5 petabytes of storage of usable.
What's the speed like on those little ruler drives? Like how fast can you write and read the data off of that if you've got 36 or 32 or whatever that is in a single 1U?
Look, my hand goes away.
It does. It goes away right in there.
It's actually, these are NVMe. So they're going to be ridiculously fast.
So they're going to be ridiculously fast. Yeah. Oh my! I get why someone would call you and say, "I want one of these." And I mean, because how much? So okay, hypothetically, if you were to stick a petabyte of storage into a 1U using something like this in these rulers, what would the price end up being if you needed the full petabyte? Do you have any? Can you wrap? Do you have a calculator that goes that high? Like,
I'm trying to do head math, and it's. I don't know if I'm going to get there. Hang on. 32.
I love having you on the show to do math.
It would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm just going to guess, this box packed.
Yeah.
Probably around 300K.
I know that's a lot of money and all, but considering it's a petabyte in a 1U, that seems like kind of a bargain to me.
It's a petabyte of NVMe flash. I mean,
yeah.
And so, well, here's the fun part. Okay. So this system is designed to be a server. Okay.
Yeah.
There is also going to be available an NVMe JBOD that that you'll be able to externally connect to another system. So you can have shelves of disk and just a server or two. If you decide to do like a high availability cluster above it or something like that, you can do that. And there's a number of software products that you can deploy that would allow you to create an HA cluster pool of head nodes that would then connect to the storage, and basically
have a big
their job
old
is
Ceph
to serve
cluster of awesomely storaginess. Holy moly!
Pretty awesome.
Extremely awesome.
So okay, that's kind of it. That's in the what's coming category.
Yes, that's in the what's coming. If you I want to touch that so badly. I would be terrified. Like if I was the server admin and I was in there, I would be terrified that I would accidentally like have the most massive static shock against some of those drives. Like I would be tiptoeing around it.
Well, you got to figure, and I'm just going on what today's street prices for enterprise SSDs are.
Yeah, they're sitting down over time. Yeah.
Well, they're sitting right around 50, 60 cents a gig right now, right? So if you figure it's a 32 terabyte drive, it probably costs 16 grand to buy it.
Sure.
Right. So they're gonna be kind of expensive. I was basing my 300 grand estimate on them probably coming down to around 10,000 before they come out.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I mean, who would have thought that we'd be at the point where we're kind of measuring gigabytes in pocket change in terms of price? So obviously we're going to keep coming down, but holy moly. Oh my goodness. That would store so many bootleg copies of 1980s cartoons. I'm telling you straight up right now.
You are right.
I'm pretty sure I could fit an awful lot of episodes of the Thundercats on that thing. Holy moly. Not that I'm condoning piracy of Thundercats, by the way. Okay. Let's move on to something. Let's change gears a little bit. Let's change gears a little bit. I want to talk. Someone had a question about a firewall.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to take a look at that one? The thought was someone wanted to build a dedicated firewall system, maybe running pfSense or something else, kind of whatever you recommended, something that has a lot of ports in it, so it could kind of double as a switch. Do you have any recommendation for that?
Well, actually, our friends at Supermicro actually will sell white box switches. They actually don't have any software on them. So you can buy a 1U device with 24 ports, 48 ports, 1 gig, 10 gig, managed, unmanaged. You know, the logic is in there. You just have to put the operating software on there. So if you wanted to install like OpenFlow or something like that, or you wanted to run a software on some other software defined networking product that you could drop on there, those, and you know what, they are very, very accessible. I found them, you know, from an economic standpoint, they're flat out, they're cheap.
What price range have you seen them in? Like, what's the rough range?
Anywhere from about $300 for a 24 port gigabit.
Oh, geez.
You know, to maybe $1,100-$1,200 for a 48 port 10 gig switch.
But I mean, just on the lower end, that's going to do, even for most offices, that'll do the job just fine. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I would say up to, say, the small medium enterprise, as long as you have. You know, this is one of those things where if you have the talent, you don't need to buy anything. If you don't have the talent, then you need to buy stuff. Right? So if you have good people, or if you have a relatively ambitious sysadmin that wants to design and develop his own switch, then that's there. It's right there.
What software would you throw on it? Like if you were sitting down to do it, and you had, let's say, a small size enterprise, and they said, here, what would you go with software wise?
Arista Networks.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Why?
Because they're the best.
Because the best.
Well, that's okay. Now we are kind of getting a little bit away from kind of the Lunduke ideology here, because I'm talking about buying software. I'm not talking about what's available in the free and open. So if we wanted to talk about simply what's out in the free and open, OpenFlow is pretty cool. Okay. On Fedora Linux, I know that really well. So I can tell you that works really, really well. And so then for
OpenFlow on top of Fedora, a good solution, you'd say.
Yeah, and then we use pfSense here for our security stuff. Yeah, and last time I was in Austin, I met the team. They're pretty cool people. So
yeah, running pfSense here as well. Way overkill for what I need.
Of course, I know.
But like, why not, right?
Why not? Yeah, it's easy. And
I had an old dedicated server I'm not using anymore. That needs to have pfSense on it.
Right. I mean, you can even get subscription support from pfSense if you want to. It's not even that expensive. So that makes it relatively accessible for just about everybody.
That's okay. That's pretty straightforward. Now, what was the company's name that sells the nice like 1U unit with a bunch of ports?
Oh, that's Supermicro.
That's just Supermicro. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's easy.
Yep.
All right. So let's transition back to storage again, because I have more storagey questions. This question comes from me, but like a bunch of people had this question. So I have video production issues, right? So I've realized over time I need to clearly have a dedicated server where I'm storing all of my clips, all of my data, all my stuff, because I got to keep it. And I'm hitting that point where I can't just keep dropping more drives into my production server. So what I need is a storage server that is, and this is where it gets hard, quiet, because it has to run at least somewhat close to a studio, at least for my thing. So I need something that's not going to be picked up on the microphone, capable of moving a huge video files, like 4 gig minimum, fairly quickly, and because I am the cheapest man on the planet doing it cheap. And I have to do it on Linux, because otherwise I will get made fun of by the internet. So what would I do for that sort of scenario? What would you recommend?
Well,
bearing in mind that right now my current solution in mind is a Raspberry Pi with a USB drive attached to it.
Nice.
It works, kinda.
I have a couple of systems on our website that we advertise as quiet.
Yeah.
They're in the workstation category, however, and that makes it easier to build a quiet system because you've got a little bit more room.
That's okay. That works.
I've had people ask me for quiet 1Us before, and the best I was able to really do was eliminate the fan noise, but I wasn't able to eliminate the noise of the air moving through the box. And a 1U being so small, that vectored air is going to make some noise when it's moving, because it's moving really fast. It's kind of like the difference between a fire hose and a garden hose, right? So
okay.
So that's kind of the idea. So one of the systems that I developed recently that just came out with the latest refresh from Intel is our product is called the Velocity D59SQ, and I'll put it up on the screen here in just a sec.
Sure.
So here's what our online configurator looks like on our website. And so you can see there that this isn't a workstation chassis, but you'll note, I don't know if my hand can reach that. Can't. Okay.
No,
so
not
anyway,
quite.
actually, I can use my mouse. See, you can see my cursor.
Got a mouse.
Right?
Technology is amazing.
So right behind this little door here that does have a key lock on it, which is kind of
drive
cool.
bays.
Yeah, there's 8 drive bays in there.
Oh.
Okay. Now this system has been tested and confirmed to not exceed 28 decibels at full load.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not bad.
So if you were to then throw in a moderate processor like that guy right there, and then you put some memory in it like that much right there, and then you look at the drives, you can see we can go, let's put all these 12 terabyte drives in here. Right? Because you said you need storage, right?
You gotta have storage. Yeah.
Yeah. So on some of the systems, I basically have a rule that if it's 8 drives or less in a system, then you can pick the drives one by one. If there's more than 8, then I just have one drive and a drop down, and you can pick the quantity, right? You see over here, there's a quantity. Okay. So with the systems like this, it's just,
you just pick them.
So, well, that, and you can mix and match. What if you want like 2 SSDs and then you want, 4 big disks and then 2 like 15K or something? Yeah, I get configs like that submitted to me all the time, right? So with that, we'll go with the 8i RAID controller and the cache. We want, because this is just going to be a NAS,
right?
We might as well put a Titan XP in it, right? And then
might as well.
I don't know what you're running in your environment.
I like how you roll, my friend.
Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and put a 10 gig SFP in there. And
we'll
get a Blu-ray thing going, and then we will run what distro is you're a SUSE guy, aren't you?
No. Technically, I'm on the OpenSUSE board as of today, but the elections are in a few weeks, so I can use anything.
We'll run OpenSUSE this time, just for you.
Okay, just for this time.
And then we'll put all those fancy drives in RAID 5.
Nice.
Well, screw it. Let's make it RAID 6 because it's you got 8 drives there. So basically what that's going to give you is about 72 terabytes of storage.
Oh, that would be sweet. Yeah.
And it would be quiet. And so real simple. And so, but you are looking at a little bit of a price tag there. But to get 70 some odd terabytes of storage for $13,000.
See that again? Yeah, it's like the price tag may be high, but it's kind of like the 1U petabyte. It's like, well, yeah, that's a big stack of cash, but 10 years ago I could have never imagined that small of amount of money and that huge amount of data. Like,
yeah,
and also part of that is we did put a Titan GPU in there.
Well, of course. That was quite a bit of it, actually, probably. Right? So,
yeah, that's funny to me.
But, hey, whose NAS doesn't need a Titan XP?
I can't think of anyone, my friend. If it's not a NAS if it doesn't have a Titan. That should be NVIDIA's new slogan, by the way. They should just go after the NAS market. GPUs for NASs.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the only reason I chose this system was simply because of the quiet caveat that you threw at me. If it was something else, I'd have just given you, a 2U with 12 drives in it and called it good.
Yeah. What would that be like? So let's say for someone out there who doesn't have the studio constraints like I have, and they just needed like a storage. They needed a lot of storage, like a 2U here.
There you go. This guy right here is called the Iris 229-12. The 9 designator is in our naming convention just basically means that it's running on the scalable platform Intel's. So the 8 series was the V4 and yada yada yada. So, and then again, you got chips. Now I know we're talking about NAS, so there's usually, unless you're doing a high level of compression, or you're running a file system in a software stack that enables something like dedupe or something like that. When you're doing that, you do need a little extra CPU. And so, but look, 8 cores is rock solid, right? So I would just do that, right? And then again, depending on what your IO profile is like, your RAM needs are going to vary as well. So for example, if you were going to run like a ZFS on Linux on this guy,
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's kind of where I was thinking. Yeah.
Then you would probably want to start at 128. That's where I would start on the memory
Really?
for a ZFS system. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, I put just a couple of limited choices in here for operating system disks, but you notice we have 128 gigs of RAM there, right? So for the OS disks, I like to have anywhere between 2 and 2.5 times the amount of RAM in the capacity for the OS disks. And that is, in the event that we have a catastrophic problem, we can capture an entire core dump, right? So you get everything in your memory gets flushed to disk on one of the on one of those massive catastrophic errors, right? So you want to be able to capture all that. Now, if you have a OS disk that is too small, the part that contains the information that you need to diagnose your problem may not get saved.
That would be a real bummer. No, that's a good point. I've never even thought of that before.
Yeah. So it's always good to have sufficient OS volume to encapsulate at least double the amount of RAM you have. I like to go at least 2.5 times, but that's kind of a rule of thumb.
Fair.
And then, then we'll do the 480s. We'll mirror those with 2 of them. Yep. And then we're going to put, let's just use the 12 TBs again, because those are just so damn sexy, right? And so we would not put a RAID card in this system. We would put a host bus adapter.
Now,
that would allow us.
This is actually kind of an interesting question. So on the drive front, so you got the Ultra Stars selected there. For most people putting together a NAS, is that kind of a way you'd recommend them go? Like what's a good current drive in that category for a NAS sort of solution? What would you go with?
This is what I would do.
Okay.
And so now this is SAS. I was kind of going along kind of the ZFS best practices road there for just a little bit, but what you would want to do, it would really depend on the workload. Okay. Right. So a couple of things to take into consideration nowadays, SATA disks are maxed out at 6 gig. So there is a throughput maximum there, right? And SAS disks go up to 12 gig. So
that's a larger number, by the way. That's better.
Yeah, and in most cases, bigger is better. And in this case, bigger and better only costs you about $10 a disk. SATA versus SAS. SATA versus SAS in the same series. I've got the SATA disk right there. Oh, look, it's minus 144. So if you can see I'm willing to bet that
I can see that.
The cost of the SAS disk probably hasn't been updated. We don't have dynamic pricing in here. This is all done.
Sure.
All handled by a backend database that's updated as we get new information. So,
but still, I mean, you
could. What's funny is that all of the disk manufacturers that we carry, and now we carry them all because Western Digital and HGST are the same company. And then Seagate.
Are they?
Yeah, Western Digital owns HGST.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that happened a little bit ago. It just over the holidays is when it closed and became public information and all that. It's been in the works for about a year. I mean, acquisitions like that.
I think there were so many things going on in the tech world at that point that just went poof, and I just missed that entirely.
Right. So if you were going to do basically just like Linux, NFS, and shares, right? Yeah,
let's go with that.
I would do SATA disks and RAID. Okay. So let's even go with one of these high quality Seagate 10 terabyte drives, right? Because Seagate also has helium disks, so they are speedy. They're actually filled with helium. I don't know if they make you talk funny or anything like that, but
there's hard drives that are filled with helium. This I didn't even. I literally thought that was like a marketing buzzword, like extreme edition. Like I thought that's what that was. I didn't know it was actual helium.
It's funny because it actually does accomplish something.
What?
Right? Helium is easy. Helium provides.
You need to make the drives lighter.
The air in there, basically, instead of having air inside the drive, you have helium inside the drive, which is lighter than air. So there's less restriction physically.
Oh.
Right. And when you're talking about spinning at 7,200 RPMs, then there would be a difference. That a little bit of drag can create a difference, right?
Right. That does actually make sense now that you say it like that. I wanted to mock it, but now that science actually holds up. Okay.
No. Now, the next time you go to Costco to get a set of tires put on your car and they try to sell you the extra nitrogen inflation, you can joke about that because that doesn't do anything. But
I don't even know what that would do either.
yeah,
if it helps anything, I make fun of everything. So that'll
yeah.
probably just happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty true. So this guy, if we were going to do SATA and RAID, then we obviously want to get a RAID controller put in there. This system actually has the 12 gig SAS and the RAID built into it.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's why there's no choice for it in the selector. Okay,
that's really cool.
But we can add like high-speed networking. We can add fiber channel if we need to connect by fiber channel or anything like that. So all that stuff is in there, and it's really easy to do. But that would basically be your SATA RAID setup. And again, for a system of this magnitude, it's really not that much money. I'll try to put a highlight on the price so you might be able to see a little bit better.
Yeah, about 13, little over 13K for what you spec'd out there. Was that with course, 12 storage drives and yeah.
Yeah, and this is, obviously this is our frontward facing pricing. We have a number of different discount tiers that we offer based on government or education or civil service or .org or whatever. So,
nice.
Yeah, so all the ones that could be qualified for, I add in whenever I can and try to help everybody out as much as possible.
Huh.
But that's your basic, that's your garden variety storage system anyway.
I do love how much more awesome so much of this stuff has gotten over the last few years, because the stuff you're describing as garden variety was literally imaginary sci-fi of just 10 years ago. That is so awesome.
Yeah, I feel the same way because obviously I'm a little aged. I think I'm maybe a generation older than most folks in tech, I think, and that at least the people coming up right behind me, they glom on to the latest technologies and they get it really well and all that. I got to try to understand all this stuff, and so that's kind of, but I'm a hardware guy, have been forever. So that's, the thing that the one thing that I really am good at is designing solutions. And
that's what you do, man. Yeah.
Well, yeah, somebody's got to do this, right?
Somebody better be good at it, because I am not. Right. I'm good at the software stuff. I used to. I mean, really, I was thinking about this about, I don't know, I want to say 12 years ago. I was an executive at a game company, and we were setting up a massively multiplayer game, which I will leave the name off for the purpose of this because it is now dead and it was a catastrophic failure in many respects. But we were setting up our server for it, and we set up in our data center. We had a rack and we had a couple of 2 and 4U units. That was, most of our data storage and everything. And honestly, we spent on that significantly more than like the last 2U Iris that you just showed me. Significantly more. And the specs were fractions of it. I mean, not just we have half of, but like we didn't come anywhere close to a terabyte of storage for all of that, and we spent so much.
If it's any consolation, the very, very first system I ever sold as an employee here at Pogo was one of our storage devices that was called the StorageWare 3800, and I've got a placard of it. I'll show it to you. So I don't have it available right now, but it was basically a 4U unit, a big, thick thing with this big, heavy door that dropped down in front of it. And it had 9 IDE drives in it. Okay. And we were able, at the time, the biggest drive out was 100 gigs. Okay. So 900 gigabytes. We have that a 4U server that had 900 gigabytes in it.
Yeah.
Thing probably cost somewhere around 50, 60K. Or something like that for 900 gigabytes of storage. You could buy a hard drive for $50 that has more than that now.
I mean, and that was awesome back then.
Oh yeah, it was
awesome.
It was totally the stuff. That product flew off of our shelves. We could not build them fast enough. We were building. That was the only time I can remember that we were actually building systems we didn't have orders for, because the orders were just coming so fast.
You might as well, right?
I mean, built. As soon as they hit the website, we were building them and then just leaving the disks unpopulated, and then whatever disks they chose, just shove them in there and ship it out.
Take them in and send them out the door.
But those systems were really, really tricky to build because the RAID cards were like this big, because they had IDE slots on them.
Yeah.
And then you had these ribbon cables, like, 9 ribbon cables all had to get folded into this origami thing to not restrict airflow.
Oh man, those were the good old days. I remember dealing with those. Those were awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, to see how far we've come, I'm still working for the same company that I sold that system 4 years ago. I mean, it's kind of trippy that it's
amazing. It's that amazing.
Yeah. It's that close in my memory that it was, it seems like it was only yesterday that we were selling those. And now, now we've got, multi-petabyte offerings and stuff like that are, just crazy, crazy huge. And they're just a ton of fun too.
I mean, it kind of melts my brain a little bit, if I'm being completely honest with you. It does. It kind of makes you stop. Google just opened up a new data center here in Oregon. They have a big, giant data center at the Dalles, and they opened up a brand new one in this little town up kind of, east of Portland here. And, big place, big data center, room for, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of racks, right? And then my mind comes back to hundreds to thousands of racks with data and cooling and whatnot for all of them. And then use that crazy that you showed me right at the beginning and populate the racks with those, even if they're not full, even if, let's say, they're a quarter full with those, with space for ventilation and maybe some peripherals and whatnot. We're talking about, say 10 petabytes per rack times, oh my heavens. The amount of data that can be stored then in one data storage warehouse by one company on flash NVMe drives. Oh my heavens.
that is
one day.
That's mind blowing. It is.
One day that will be mine. I am verklempt. I need a drink and a nap is what I need after all of that. But before we, holy moly, dude. Okay. Before we head off into the sunset too far, I got to give a quick shout out to some of our other sponsors here, because it wouldn't be a show if you didn't give shout out to other sponsors, including Purism, our newest sponsor here, who, I'm just going to point this out. They ship laptops with hardware kill switches for things like wireless and webcams in them. They're actual physical toggle switches, and they cut the power to actual devices on your computer. I just think that's rad, because how very intense cyber hackery can you get if you have a laptop with kill switches in it? I don't know about you, Paul, but if I had one of these, every time I flicked the switch, I would have to say something like "kill switched engaged."
Oh, of course.
You have to, right? You can find out more over at Purism's website, puri.sm. It's a hard website name to say, because you can't say puri.sum like you would at purism.com, but it's a cool domain name just the same. And Lulzbot, makers of that cool 3D printer back there, they make the Lulzbot Mini. I would just like to point out, if you go through their website, the Lulzbot hardware is open source hardware certified, and this company runs the majority of their business all on free software, and they contribute back to organizations like the Free Software Foundation and the Software Freedom Conservancy, because they're cool people, and that's how they roll with their 3D printers. You can find out more over at lulzbot.com. Paul, thank you so much. And I get to see, will you be up at Linux Fest Northwest here? Or someone will, I'm sure.
No, I'll be there.
Awesome. Well, I will see you then, my friend. That is on April 28th. So if you want to meet Paul and me and whatnot, head on up to Linux Fest Northwest on April 28th in Bellingham, Washington. And that's all I got. Wave goodbye to the universe, Paul.
Bye, universe.
All right. See everybody later.